2027 seems to be the tipping point for buying a new car. I would advise most of you who are looking at buying a car, pick something up as soon as you possibly can. Because in 2027, cars, they're going to monitor you. You're going to have to pay extra for features. You can't even fix your own car even though you paid for it. And there's a host of technology that you want nothing to do with. I'm going to break this down, give you 5 of those key reasons you want to avoid a 2027 model year and buy something else as soon as possible. Let's get into it now. Life's too short to drive boring cars. The first one comes down to the drivetrains. You know, when I grew up, I often drove cars that were V6s, V8s. They had powerful engines, manual gearboxes. But sadly, as we see the years go by, every single year engines are getting smaller, tinier. V6s are getting swapped out with turbo 4s. V8s are getting replaced by turbo 4s and hybrids. We're seeing all of this new technology with little engines that are working twice as hard. Are they well designed? Absolutely. Are they expensive to fix? Oh yeah. And that's a big reason why a lot of people don't want any of these newer, smaller engines. They're complex, they run hot, they run hard, and when it's time to fix them, they're usually too expensive. Turbos, direct injection fueling, as well as all kinds of interesting little technology on board to keep these engines together while they're running as hot as they are. No. And looking at the ratio of the types and sizes of engines that are available in 2027, it goes something like 4% of the cars sold in 2027 are 3 cylinders. 4 cylinders make up about 52% because a lot of them are utilizing hybrid technology. 5 cylinders are only about 1%, and I can think of a couple of great cars that use them, the RS3 and the TTRS, which are my personal favorites, and those cars are going away. The 6 cylinders, and those are only 18%. Basically, barely 1 in 5 vehicles has a V6, and that's going away. On top of it, 8 cylinders down to 8%, largely relegated to big premium SUVs that cost $140,000, $180,000 or full-size pickup trucks. Nothing in between. Very difficult to find sports cars with those sizes of engines other than maybe a Mustang 5-liter or possibly a Hellcat. Outside of that, V8s are going away. 10 cylinders. Remember the Lamborghini Gallardo. Remember the BMW E65. Remember the Carrera GT by Porsche. A lot of amazing legendary V10 engines, but even Lamborghini has pretty much made that go away. The Temerario now is replacing with a twin-turbo V8 and a hybrid, pushing the outgoing Huracan V10. That's right, all of these larger legendary engines are going away. On top of it, electric vehicles exclusively with no internal combustion at all are going to expect to take about 17 to 18% of the market. That's 1 in 5 vehicles. As a matter of fact, it's essentially right on the money with 6-cylinder engines in the market and growing. As the mandates keep pushing on, we're seeing more and more of this innovation and technology and branding, bringing more EVs to the market. And of course, with all these mandates, manufacturers are finding it very expensive to manufacture internal combustion engines when you've got all these mandates and taxes and laws pushing them out the door and forcing a lot of these manufacturers to create these smaller, cost-effective vehicles that just don't use gas. They're sipping, and with this target to net zero, means that every manufacturer is really working hard and diligently to produce smaller, tinier fuel-sipping vehicles, or even more importantly, electric vehicles only. By 2030, very few vehicles on the road will be exclusively internal combustion. By 2035, it's going to be almost null and void.
No!
Unfortunately, by 2027, less and less and less of those great internal combustion vehicles are going to be sticking around on the road. As you look around in traffic, you're going to see more and more vehicles that are hybrids or pure electric, and that's the market trend. 27, 28, 29, we're going to see more and more and more. We're going to see less of the vehicles with V8s and V6s, and we're going to see many more with the EVs, hybrids, turbo 3s, and 4 cylinders. This is a devastating time, and for a true car enthusiast, we're watching these amazing cars, engines, and drivetrains go bye-bye by the dodo bird. Second major reason comes down to video surveillance. Did you realize that virtually every vehicle now in the United States come 2027 are going to be mandated to provide a video surveillance, observing the driver's behaviors? Are they drowsy? Are they drunk? Is there any other behavior patterns that these cars are going to be looking for? Many cars historically are generally a tool. You get behind the wheel, you press the button, turn the key, and away you go. You make the decision as the driver. You decide when you're going to switch lanes. You decide when you're going to accelerate. You decide when you're tired and you're going to pull over and get some rest. But now, fear not. The car manufacturers and, of course, naturally with lawmakers are creating some laws and mandates as of 2027 where you can no longer be exclusively the decision maker on how that vehicle gets driven or by whom. A lot of this surveillance, essentially called the advanced driver monitoring systems, they're intended to track your eye movements, patterns, and of course, even the overall attentiveness in real time. That being said, many people are paranoid, thinking that, you know what, how far is too far? This is just sort of the small end of the wedge, pushing the door open. How far? Gets to the point where these manufacturers start feeding it back to law enforcement. Many manufacturers, depending on the software and the programming, may make a decision to pull you over. Feel that maybe possibly you're about to sneeze and that squinting action may actually trigger the vehicle to decide that for some reason you're tired because you yawned or you sneezed and you had that little blink for a second. There might be decision making done by software and AI that now may decide whether you are capable of driving. Now, in many regards, people getting behind the wheel after being intoxicated, that's a good feature. However, again, it's a small end of the wedge where a lot of these manufacturers, and depending on how they're programmed, may in fact see this as a false positive. A lot of people may see that what happens if the equipment fails? What happens if the programming's off kilter? What happens if you're driving down the freeway and it decides to shut off inadvertently? I mean, we hear of all of these glitches today, software problems, and when you hear about the average problem with today's vehicle, it's usually related to technology. It's rarely the engine and transmission. It's more often connectivity between Apple CarPlay and Android Auto or some other signal, or you get a light on the dashboard telling you that, hey, you've got an issue with lights or ADAS systems, and of course, monitoring or your backup camera fails. And a lot of it comes down to programming. A lot of it comes down to electrical gremlins and technology. And this is yet one more layer of technology, which in theory is good. However, there's definitely a lot of room for error. As a matter of fact, NHTSA is also advising, is the technology truly ready? I'm not sure, but it sounds to me a lot more control is going on up here and a lot less control between my two ears. The third reason not to buy in 2027 is this escalating amount of subscription services or paywall services. And a lot of us just like to get what we paid for. That's all. We're just looking for value. We talk about greedflation and shrinkflation, and those are all factors. And this is yet one more extension of that. Another arm, the automotive industry, which is one of the under-recognized for being regulated. It's an industry that sort of is cowboy way, and they basically want to do what they will and charge what they want, and it only limited by the sensibility of the buyer. The problem is the buyer often just doesn't make good decisions. They're thinking from the heart. They're thinking great new flashy toys, cars, technology, fast performance, all these great things, but they overlook some of the obvious. They drive the car for a year, 2, 3 years, and all of a sudden, bing, fault, that feature no longer works. Could you imagine you buy that car, you get a free year of free remote start. Then a year comes up, you get a notification, an email, and it tells you, oh, now that's going to be $42.95 every month. Please and thank you very much. The system goes away, stops activating. And that's what's starting to happen. A lot of these manufacturers are purely taking advantage of the consumer. I mean, the wiring's there, the harnesses are there, the modules are there, the programming is there. So why on earth are they selling you a product, give you a little bit of this dangle the carrot, and then all of a sudden, lo and behold, oh, it was pretty cool, wasn't it? Well, here's a little bit more, but now you've got to pay for it. As a matter of fact, things like heated seats and heated steering wheels, drivers really do object to paying the monthly fees for the hardware already installed in the car. Absolutely. I can't stand that. And I hear people complain all the time about this. Brands that are doing this, well known, BMW iX, the X5, the BMW 5 Series, and BMW is really about functions on demand. I'll tell you what demand is. Who's to say I don't want my heated seats in the middle of June? Maybe it's a frosty morning. I want to turn on the heated seats, but oh, wait a minute. It's seasonal, or I have to reactivate the subscription services. All the elements and wiring are there. Why am I paying for that? On top of it, remote start subscriptions. I had that on my F Type. I had a remote subscription. Of course, it came with the vehicle, but it only lasted so long. And then after that, it went away. Now, some manufacturers like Toyota do offer the ability to at least remotely start with the key fob once the subscription goes away. So it's not all is lost. But my Jag, you couldn't do that. And many other manufacturers basically give it up entirely. So it's a very painful excursion. Now, vehicles like the Camry and the Toyota Tacoma, Tundra, Toyota Sienna, Lexus RX, NX, and the whole variety of those have a remote connect subscription that is one of the most criticized. I've seen this on Reddit and all over the forums about people complaining, and even we own our own 22 Camry, and the same thing happened to us. It was great at first, and then that went away. Now, at least the key fob works, but honestly, you don't get all the feedback and other features that come with it. Why are we paying more? On top of it, extra EV performance. Buyers are already paying for this technology, the batteries, the electric motor, and yet brands like Mercedes-Benz with the EQE SUV, the EQS, EQE, and of course, the acceleration increase is part of a subscription services. You make your car going faster, but you have to pay extra money for it. The hardware is there. Why am I paying more for a boost feature? Makes no sense. Or the advanced driver assistance features like adaptive cruise, lane centering, and parking aids increasingly require recurring fees like BMW i5 or the X7, iX3, and part of the new BMW new class vehicles. That's their EV platforms, the flat bottom girls, you know what I'm talking about. And then of course there's other things like the built-in dash cams and drive recorders. It's already installed cameras, but BMWs like the X3 and the BMW 7 Series have that, and they're going to start charging you for that as subscription service. How about key fob remote functions? The physical key fob has the buttons and the features built in, but they sort of block it. And Toyota and Lexus are known for that. From the connected services ecosystem, including the RAV4 and ES, and it prevents you from operating that. As well, the software unlocked lighting themes and cosmetic features. A lot of times, vehicles like the Kia EV9 or the Hyundai Kia with software-defined EVs. Ridiculous. As well, connected infotainment, navigation subscriptions. Let's be honest, Audi Q6, the e-tron, Toyota Crown Signia, the BMW X1, many GM and Hyundai products are also utilizing that. It's just pure pain, and it's really insult to injury. Why a lot of these manufacturers are gouging the consumers. I've paid for it, and these cars and trucks and SUVs are not getting any cheaper, and yet I have to pay more? Talk about a poke in the eye, and things are just getting worse as we get year over year over year. These manufacturers are finding new and improved ways to justify that. I even saw another YouTuber. He believed that it's kind of okay in some applications. There's no way, no shape, no form can I justify in any way that it's justified. In my own personal take, I bought this vehicle. The hardware is in there. I paid a lot of money for it. Why am I paying extra just to turn a feature back on? Makes no sense to me. The fourth reason comes down to sheer complexity and the fact that a lot of people are locked out software-wise related to their vehicle. They often can't get in, program, identify what the issues are. And way back in the early 90s, they came out with a standard called the OBD2 because a lot of OEMs were taking advantage of consumers. And you couldn't diagnose or troubleshoot your own vehicle because of the complexity. Well, things fast forward to 2020, 25, and 27 and beyond, things just continually get increasingly more complex. And now they're more often than not even locking you out from even doing simple brake jobs or maintenance resets. And in many cases, VIN pairing, encrypted ECUs, software authentication, online-only module programming, subscription diagnostics, gateway locks, and feature activation servers mean that all of this mumbo jumbo, and we have to pay more, or we have to take it to the dealer and we're held hostage for the sheer cost of their service rates at $200, $300, $400 an hour shop rate. On top of the parts, we can't shop around because you can't even go into a wrecking yard, find a rack or some kind of water pump or a system that maybe came out of a wrecked car with low mileage. It's now VIN locked. You can't transfer that part. You can't go to the auto wrecker and grab that part out of that old wrecked car and drop it in your car. Even though it's the exact same part, a lot of these new vehicles now are locking you out from doing that. A lot of these new vehicles are locking you out and preventing you from troubleshooting and diagnosing your vehicle and getting down to the bottom of the problem. You now have to go to many of these really, really expensive shops, OEM shops, to get your vehicle fixed. But there are specific manufacturers that I've researched that are a little bit more aggressive with this technology, locking you out. And now, while there's no manufacturer that entirely locks you out 100%, many of them make it very, very difficult. And these brands are basically Stellantis with their secure gateway module, the SGW. The blocks may scan tools without authorization. If you're buying a vehicle like a Jeep Wrangler, Ram 1500, Dodge Charger, Daytona EV, or Jeep Wagoneer, those may be vehicles that are part to that. As well, Mercedes-Benz, the SCN cooling, online programming requirements, encrypted modules. You'll find that in vehicles like the EQE, EQS, the G-Class, S-Class, and beyond. On top of it, BMW and the component coding with the VIN pairing, subscription-linked software functions in the i5, iX, X7, and 7 series. Clearly, they're electric vehicles and more advanced, more premium models. On top of it, General Motors, the Global B electrical architecture with the module authentication, subscription telematics, and those will be found in vehicles like the Silverado EV, the GMC Sierra EV, and the Cadillac Escalade IQ. So their electric vehicle platforms clearly are impacted by this. Now, Rivian as well, limited independent repair ecosystem, software-heavy architecture like the R1T and the R1S models, and it just makes more and more difficulty. And we know that they've had electrical gremlins at Rivian. That's one of their key areas. I mean, they don't have an engine per se, it's electric only. So that is going to make it difficult to do any sort of service, including any EVs, including like Tesla, same storyline. But Lucid, another one, highly centralized software systems and limited service access. How about Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis with the increasing ECU security and the gateway protections like the Ioniq 9 or EV9 and the Genesis GV90. As well, Volkswagen Group with the online coding and authentication systems and protected diagnostics that you'll find those in the Audi Q6 e-tron, the Porsche Macan EV, and the Volkswagen ID Buzz. So is it any shock to you why people are getting frustrated? You can't work on your own stuff. You can't understand what's going on with it. It's increasingly more expensive. The worst part is the engines are getting smaller and working harder, and we can't even get the engines that we want. Gearboxes are getting flimsy, CVTs are trash, and honestly, just the fragility of a lot of these vehicles means that you have to baby it and you have to take care of it above and beyond what some of the older vehicles. Remember some of the older Toyotas? You could neglect it, you could abuse it, and it would still keep on trucking. Now, vehicles are such tight tolerances. If you don't have the bang-on tolerances, if you don't have the perfect fueling and the amount of fuel changes and oil changes, these vehicles can certainly start biting back. I mean, oil, for example, doesn't just lubricate the bottom end of the engine anymore. Now, oil is also used for turbocharger, bearing lubrication. It's also utilized for variable valve timing system, VVTIs, and variable Vano systems. And it's used in a lot of different areas. It's part of cooling and lubrication and pressure transfer. So unfortunately, oiling and neglect of oiling does cause you a lot of problems. Vehicles are far more complex, but there is a fifth reason why you don't want to buy in 2027. And let's be honest, it comes down to cost. The average vehicle, according to statistics, back in 1970 cost about $3,450. And I know you're going to say, okay, well, what about your wages? Your wages were low then too. Right. But based on adjusted for inflation rates, that vehicle back in 1970 was much closer to $28,000 based on the inflationary increase and adjustment for that. That being said, as we go down the line and we start to see how things have changed, in 2022, we started to see a major peak and things changed. We saw the spike when there were shortages of vehicles. People had extra money that were getting handed out by the government, and it basically meant that a lot of people were paying more and more and more, and they were willing to pay things like market adjustment fees, buy the extras. And I even know somebody today that works for a Toyota dealer and says you can't get a brand new RAV4. You have to order it. They tell you a year to 2 years down the road. However, if you're willing to buy the top trim, plug-in hybrid, buy all the extras, and pay a little bit of extra market adjustment, guess what? They'll make an exception for you. Those are the only people driving away in a Toyota RAV4 these days if you're willing to buy top trim level and buy a little bit of extras, showing a little extra support for the brand. If you want to just say, I want base model and I don't want any extras and I want to buy cash, good luck. You're going to wait 2 years. And when we look at the prices pre-pandemic, the average vehicle price in 2019 was about $37,000. Adjusted for inflation, it was about $44,500, the pre-pandemic peak. Then we start to see things really spike to the point where in 2022 we saw the absolute roof. We saw it, our heads ripped right through the roof, if you will. The vehicle price on average was about $48,000, but adjusted for inflation, it was up to about $52,000 for adjusted inflation numbers. Then things start to slowly creep down, prices start to change, stabilize, and then in 2027, sources like Edmunds and Cox Automotive and many other resources tell us that the average transaction price is creeping up to $52,000. Today, in 2026, it's just crept up to 51,000. Next year, up to 52, and adjusted for inflation, it'll be almost $51,000. So as you can see, adjusted for inflation, in the last 30, 35 years, we've seen something like close to $25,000 to $30,000 based on adjusted for inflationary numbers. We're paying more than we've ever paid. And why? Because a lot of this new technology, research, development for a lot of these EVs and hybrid tech means that these OEMs are spending more efforts, putting more money and development costs in developing these new electric vehicles and hybrid technology, rather than enhancing and rebuilding and making their internal combustion vehicles more reliable, more fuel efficient, and better performers. They sort of push them to the side. And why do you think you're seeing more oil burners, CVT transmissions, and problematic internal combustion engines? Why? Because the effort isn't so much there. There seems to be more of a push and an effort to transition more to hybrid and pure electric. That's why the quality is questionable. The reliability really isn't there. The longevity might be there, but if you are willing to do all the right things, the T's and the C's, and then you might have a vehicle that could last. That being said, there's very few cars on the market today with internal combustion engines that will literally last 200,000 to 300,000 miles. Of course, prices have gotten out of hand. We're paying for the tech, we're paying for the technology and the development, but sadly enough, where does this top ever hit? I think it's going to continue to rise with the increasing push and mandates for better fuel efficiency, more technology that are spying on you. Of course, more software locks means that you're doing less, you're spending more, and unfortunately, you're getting a lower grade product, in my own personal opinion. That being said, maybe you just wanted to buy something used and skip new altogether. Why are used BMWs so cheap? Why are used Maseratis so cheap? Such a great buy. And why are used Audis so cheap? Hope to see each and every one of you real soon, everybody. You all have a lovely day. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.